वक्त था वक्त मसीहा न किसी और का वक्त मैं ना आता तो कोई और ही आया होता.
And with that, we'll just go over to Saqib now, and Saqib will give us an update of which book he's going to do this week and a small introduction to the book and what he's learned. Jazakallah, Saqib, over to you.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
In his own words, the book I chosen for this week was Noah's Ark. Yeah, I know I was supposed to choose the other one, but I don't know. I just picked this one afterwards because I found this more interesting. No, not that the other one wasn't interesting either, but yeah. So this book was published on the 5th of October, 1902, written for the whole purpose, which elaborates the essence of its teaching and states that those who sincerely follow its belief would be saved incredibly from the attacks of this epidemic, even without a vaccination. So I thought this book goes very well with what's happening in society today, because it's talking about like having faith in God, even though there's no vaccination and so on. Okay. Introduction. At the very outset, Hazrat Mirza Sahib has gratefully acknowledged the measures taken by the British government to have the masses vaccinated against the plague. In the year 1902, the British government in India made arrangements on a very vast scale to get the residents of the province of Punjab vaccinated against a prevailing plague epidemic. It was under these circumstances that Hazrat Mirza Sahib wrote a book titled Kashtiye-Nu. Paralleling the government's scheme of providing earthly vaccination, in this book, Hazrat Mirza Sahib has presented a heavenly vaccination, as it were, before the public. The following two pairs of the poetic verses were printed very promptly on the title page. This plague has lacerated the world's core into fragments. This isn't merely a plague, but actually a great upheaval. Come hither soon to seek shelter in our ship, because the ship has the support of the knowing God. The essence, the declaration of the vaccination. It is the will of God that has led me to purposely abstain from letting myself vaccinated. And it is the will of God that leads me now to declare that all those taking shelter within the four walls of my house do not need vaccination either. At the very outset, Hazrat Mirza Sahib has gratefully acknowledged the measures taken by the British government to have the masses vaccinated against the plague. Following this statement, Hazrat Mirza Sahib has presented his teachings in order to answer the inquiry to those who would like to know about the teachings. Would restrict obedience, shall save a person from affliction of the plague. In his own words, let it be clear that taking the pledge and merely professing with the lips is meaningful unless it incorporates the conviction of the heart and implementations through good deeds. Let it also be understood that when God spoke about granting safety only to those who take shelter within my house, God referred to those people who obey me completely, to those who have entered my spiritual house. God didn't refer to those people taking shelter in my temporal house that consists of sticks and stones. In this book, Hazrat Mirza Sahib has also compared the famous prayer for the daily bread, the Lord's Prayer. This is taught to Christians in the Bible. The famous prayer, Al-Fatiha, the opening of the first chapter of the Holy Quran. This is taught in the Holy Quran. The fact of the matter is that a pursuit of the comparison is sufficient to obtain an idea of the greatness of the Holy Quran. Finally, Hazrat Mirza Sahib has reflected upon the person whose horizons are circumscribed only by prayer for the daily bread. He has noted in this regard, also remember that amongst the great objectives of Al-Fatiha is the following: guide us onto the right path, the path of those upon whom thou hast bestowed favors. Chapter 1, verse 5 to 6. What is taught in the Bible to pray for the daily bread, Al-Fatiha teaches one to pray to God for all those blessings that were bestowed upon previous prophets. The comparison is quite remarkable. Jesus Christ's prayers was accepted so that the Christians have achieved enormous material gains. Similarly, the Quranic prayer al-Fatiha was accepted through the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, whereby a righteous and saintly Muslims were made the spiritual inheritance and the beneficiaries of the Israelite prophets. That the Prophet Messiah was raised from this nation is a fact, a result of the acceptance of the prayer of Fatiha. Truthfulness of the promised Messiah. Hazrat Mirza Sahib has then presented the pure teachings of the Holy Quran and Sunnah, so as to provide the reader with their quintessence. He has discussed the unity of God and man's knowledge and concept of God, and knowledge of and complete obedience of Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. May peace and blessings of Allah be upon him. Disclosure is truly a distillation that has been poured, and as it were, in the form of a book. It is quite impossible to summarize it here, or to do so justice to the force and beauty of the exposition. The reader is referred to the original book. Hazrat Mirza Sahib has also strongly urged the members of the Jamaat, the movement, to seek piety and inculcate high morals. The passages in which he describes the greatness of Allah and exhorts his devotees to seek his nearness and unparalleled in the sublimity. The success of the heavenly vaccination was remarkable. By the grace of God, all residents in Hazrat Mirza Sahib's house remained well. As for the other members of the Jamaat movement in the Qadian, as well as all over Hindustan and India, there were only token cases wherein people were infected by the disease. This distinction that the Ahmadis were granted immunity against the plague was so conspicuous in the villages that people in general were amazed. The effect of the phenomenon was so powerful and compelling that droves of people began to join the Jamaat. Many lists of written pledges started arriving to Hazrat Mirza Sahib's attention. From those who would not physically travel to Qadian to take the pledge, in this manner, a revelation of the Hazrat Mirza Sahib has recited from God, O Messiah of the masses, please grant us protection, was clearly fulfilled. People also wrote request prayers that they should also be granted immunity from the plague. In short, in heavenly vaccination scheme was highly successful. Jazakallah.
Jazakallah. We still have 1 minute, so Saqib, I'll just ask you, what did you learn from the book, and that you can share with us from you personally, and how you think it relates to now what Hazrat Masih Maud has written?
So what Hazrat Mirza was written back then, and what Hazur, the current Hazur, says in his various sermons and has said previously about the coronavirus itself, that even though just keep praying and praying and praying and pray for others, pray for your families and so on, that everything will come to light if you pray to God and keep connection with Him. So, and so on with the book itself. He says that even though you don't need a vaccination, you just need to have the faith in the Jamaat and have like a spiritual mindset ready and so on.
Yeah. And surely it's just like comparing it to the Noah's Ark. If you want to be on Noah's Ark, if you want to be protected, then you have to take these steps, and you have to recognize Allah. And this is what Hazrat Masih Maud essentially said. And all those people who did listen to him were eventually saved from the plague. And that was the most incredible thing. And we're living in the same time, although we're not living through a plague, because plagues were almost foretold to prophets. Hazur has made it very clear that this wasn't foretold. So we need to take the right steps, and we need to take the right medications to try and prevent ourselves from catching the virus. So Jazakallah Saqib, very well presented. And that's another book, alhamdulillah. I think it goes well with the previous book of we covered our teachings. And if you read it, then you would have saw that it was included in Noah's Ark as well. So Jazakallah for that, Saqib. Let's choose another book and let's try and do another book for next week. I just thought.